IVF specialist for 33 years, over 3 decades. No one heard of an infertility specialist when you began in 1990. How do you think of becoming one?
It's been a long journey, and my journey began way back in 94, 95, when I was just about 23, 24 years old. I was a resident in KEM Hospital doing residency, and we were taught to see hundreds of patients maybe in a matter of 1 or 2 hours. And we were taught, don't spend too much time, don't talk to them, you're wasting your time. In fact, my registrar would get angry and say, why are you spending time talking to them? It was absolutely the other way. And there were these people who kept on coming to the OPD, and they would just look at you. They would kind of say, what happened? They would say, peeth mein darad hai. Or they would say, oh, chakkar aa raha hai. All those vague symptoms. And I said, no, something is wrong. As I became senior, I realized that they wanted a baby. The fact they could not even tell me, it was such a taboo. Infertility was unspoken of. And I would feel really sorry for them. So actually, I would call them in my lunch break and then talk to them. All my friends would make fun of me, saying, oh, what are you doing? You're just wasting your time. Chalo, let's go to the canteen. Let's eat pav bhaji. Let's go. What are you doing? Because anyway, there were no treatments available at that point. It was really, really so sad. All we could do was one operation called DNC. Some of you may be knowing it. It's called dilatation and curettage, which is just cleaning the uterus. There was no laparoscopy at that time. Ultrasound was just coming in, and we didn't know what to do. So we would just write a red tablet, which is a hematinic, basically an iron tablet, yellow tablet, Bicasure, and we said, go back, come back, and nobody wanted to see these people. But it was only when I saw them in the breaks, I heard their devastating stories, the stories of desperation, of isolation, depression, almost to a point of suicide. And I felt very sorry for them. And I said, I have to do something about this. And I have to treat these people. I will learn infertility and do it. That's very sad at that point. Though I was in KEM, which is a teaching hospital, and KEM was the hospital to have India's first test tube baby. None of us knew about the test tube baby. None of us even knew it was happening. And it was really funny because I had a roommate, typical South Indian with oiled hair, and she used to wear a petticoat, kurta, red ribbons. And she was an early riser. She would take her rounds at 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock in the morning. And I was always a night bird, the owl, as everybody knows. I should take my round at 12 o'clock in the night. And at 2 o'clock, she would quietly open the door and go. And I said, wow, this girl's got a boyfriend. I was dying to know who he was. And then I realized that she was actually giving hormonal injections in the middle of the night because it had to be kept secret when Dr. Hinduja was doing the IVFs, So though it was being done, we didn't know about it. We only knew about it when the baby was born. I used to read in the journals all the exciting advances which were taking place in Cambridge, in England, in USA, about test tube baby was already born in 78. And I'm talking about in 84. And I was really, really excited to do these techniques. And that's the time I was very sure that I'm going to do infertility. That's very sad. It was very funny because my mother-in-law had a flourishing gynac and obs practice, almost 80 to 100 deliveries, and she was dying. She would say, okay, I'm going to travel. I'm going to be, sitting and enjoying while you do. And it came as a rude shock to her when I said, I'm not going to do infertility. I'm not going to take over your practice. And she thought I was crazy. She said, what is infertility? Who knows about infertility? Who's going to come to you? How are you even going to get a single patient? You're mad, you're crazy. But I was like, no, this is what I want to do. So I applied, and I was a little crazy. I didn't want any money from my in-laws at that point. So I told Anirudh, no, I'm not going to take any money. So I started applying for scholarships everywhere. I had a baby with me at that point. She was 3 or 4 months. I don't know how I did it. There were no car seats. But I remember driving a Maruti, putting her, maybe with a maid. I don't even remember what I did. Or maybe I just put her and strapped her to the, seat belt. So I get angry. I said, what is this? Why are you having a maid? Why are you having a car seat? You just came with me. I used to carry her and go for these scholarships, and I applied everywhere. Maybe 10,000, somebody gave me a ticket. My academics were good. And suddenly I won a very prestigious fellowship. And with that fellowship, I applied everywhere. See, today you have the internet, you have a mobile, you have Google, and you can just click a button. You even have career councils and guides who even put your forms in your envelopes. There are people, they don't even write their own letters. You go to a career guide, you pay them money and they do it. But that point, it was really, really tough. There were fellowships, but there were not that many. Your academics not only had to be good, but you also had to pay a lot at times, And I couldn't afford it at that point because, even if my in-laws could afford it, I couldn't afford it. And I didn't want to take any money from them for some reason. And everybody thought I was crazy. But anyway, I won this prestigious fellowship. And with that one letter, everybody accepted me. I chose to go to King's College London because England was the hub of the test tube baby. And that's where I went and I learned my infertility.
Amazing story.
But I'll tell you one thing. Hardest part was not applying and going. The hardest part was Natasha was by then 7-8 months old. And the hardest part was to leave her and to go. And I said, no, I'm not leaving her. I'm not going. And that time, Anirudh was, you know how husbands are. Big deal, no big deal, Just, you can leave her. There's so many maids. We had hospital maids. I had like 8 maids and maitranis and what boys. My in-laws were dying for me to go because they wanted to keep the baby and, help her. Look after her. And Anirudh always said, of course, you can always come back to see her. But in my mind, I know, what, I couldn't even afford to go. How can I come back? But that was the hardest decision, was to leave her and go. But I had this mission in my head, and I said, no, I have to go. I have to learn these techniques because they were not available in India. So that was the story.
So Anjali, what of the journey afterwards? So you go there and then you come back. What are the challenges that you faced through the years?
So it was okay, I went, I learned a lot out there, did it. In fact, I've picked up everything in 3 months only. I was actually bored. I was dying to come back for the baby. But then we decided no. Anirudh was to come back actually for the baby, but then he also decided to stay on. He was doing embryology. He was doing perinatology, which means he was studying what operations could be done when the fetus or the baby is in utero. Even today, there are very few perinatologists, but Anirudh had gone to the US. He was accepted in UCSF. He learned the technique. And then he spent some time with me in King's College because we had a very famous perinatologist called Kipros, the world famous. So he used to hang around there. And, we came back and we said, okay, fine, we'll start IVF. We were so naive. He said, chalo, we broke some walls and said, this is the laboratory. But then who's the embryologist? Nobody knew who's an embryologist. And we said, when we started looking for one, they said, what's an embryologist? Nobody knew that. And they said, okay, maybe you hire some technician. We said, no. Maybe you hire a BSc guy and train him, or maybe send him abroad. It wasn't there. Now, funnily, Anirudh used to wait for me. Well, I thought he used to wait for me, like a good husband. But actually, he was sitting with a very pretty embryologist in King's College for hours together. I would finish at 6, and Anirudh would finish around 4, and he spent hours chatting with her. And he said, he's obviously very bright. So he said, he picked up all the techniques. He said, listen, I've got all the protocols. Let's just start. Just break the walls. We'll just start. He said, how can you start? We don't know anything. I said, okay, fine. And we started. It was so difficult. We broke the walls. My mother-in-law was super angry because I broke her labor ward. My today's laboratory was her labor ward. Labor room, rather. And then we realized that it's so hard because nobody knew infertility was a taboo. People didn't know. We started India's first sperm bank with a big zest. We were in the front page of Times of India. Couple starts sperm bank. You must have seen one of those, cuttings in the video. And my mother was shocked. She said, what are you doing? How can you even see these words? Sperm, you better keep quiet and, you're not allowed to give any interviews and you don't do all this and just stop, And we had a hard time. In fact, I will take some of the credit for educating the people. Nobody was willing to talk about it, and we went all ahead, we were into patient education. We wanted to tell people that, look, this is the need of the hour. There's no need to feel ashamed of infertility. We went and gave all those interviews. While we were doing the things, we had so many problems, like the media. Today, you click a button on your mobile or a Google or a net, and you get the media in your house. At that point, we had to write a letter. So it took 4 weeks for the letter to go. Then they would take time. By the time the media in the laboratory came, the culture medium that we use, the shelf life was over. So we had to go running to the customs and tell them, look, this is what we are doing. They didn't understand. It was a hard time. even for the sperm bank, we store sperms in liquid nitrogen is minus 96 degrees. Where do you get liquid nitrogen? Nobody knew. They thought we were crazy. But anyway, so we discovered, Anirudh discovered at Goregaon, because, they do the inseminations on the bulls out there. So we both would sit in a little Maruti car with a canister this big, put on the back seat, and invariably we used to get caught by the police. So it was always it was always a hard time. But yes, we continued, and of course, those were the days.